Hello. We are so proud and happy to be able to speak to you today about Moon Manor, a brand new film that will be debuting in March, and how it touches on end of life topics. We are INELDA, the International End of Life Doula Association. My name is Cloud Conrad. I'll introduce you Shelby Carolyn, and we'll go around.
Thank you. Thank you, Cloud. I'm Shelby Carillon. I'm a private practice end-of-life doula, and I'm also an instructor with INELDA. I introduced Dr. Chisholm.
Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Jamie Edie Chisholm, and I am the Director of Program Development with INELDA. And just very briefly, INELDA was an organization founded in 2015, and the organization really focuses on how to accompany people at the end of life. And so our main priority is training, equipping, supporting those who want to learn more about what it means to journey with people toward the end of life, to become death doulas, death midwives. Again, I am Jamie Edie Chisholm, Director of Program Development with INELDA, and I will pass it to my siblings who will tell you more about Moon Manor.
Hi, I am Erin Granat. I am a co-writer, co-director, and co-producer of Moon Manor, which is the first feature film that I have created along with Machete, my best friend, who you'll be meeting in a second. We've been best friends since 8th grade, and this is our really exciting big moment of having a feature film meet the world. We first started writing in 2017, which is cool. Hearing INELDA began 2015, so we're just kind of born around the same time, which even then the conversation around death already has shifted so much into more of a mainstream conversation in America, at least. And our film is a story of one man's last day alive. His name is Jimmy, and he's decided to create his own funeral, as he calls it, and go out with intention and zest, and to live to die like he has lived, which is with a lot of intention and joy. And we will be available. The movie is meeting the world on March 11th. So we're so excited to be here with INELDA, which are you ladies, and the work that INELDA does is really such a North Star for us in the movie we've created about having a good death. So we're really excited just to talk today about our inspirations and to get to be in your company.
Hello, I am the co-creator of Moon Manor movie. I'm known as Machete Bang Bang, and I'm so excited to be here today with the real life workers of death. And just to echo Erin, we're available. I will say, I'm going to tweak it a little bit. Moon Manor is a wonderful comedy about death, embracing it, all the moods around it, with a wonderful cast. It stars obviously Jimmy, a dear friend and honorary uncle to Erin. It stars Deborah Wilson, Lou Taylor Pucci, Richard Reilly. Some names you may not know, but faces you may recognize. Anyway, I also want to say it will be available starting March 11th, 2022 in the US of A. So we are not yet fully global yet. We're still waiting for those international buyers. So come knocking on our door. We're waiting. Anyway, I'm going to pass the torch back to Cloud, and let's get into this.
Thank you so much. We were first approached by Moon Manor's distribution house to watch the movie and to see to hear our impressions of it and really start a conversation about end of life. And I love the fact that Moon Manor brings these conversations that are oftentimes taboo into the mainstream. And we just are thrilled to have this time to be able to have these conversations with you. So I would like for us to start with a little bit more about the main character, Jimmy. And I know that you all have a personal relationship with Jimmy, and it would be very interesting if we could just start there about that relationship and how that translated to the inspiration for the film.
Yeah, I'll jump in there because Jimmy's my honorary uncle. I grew up knowing him as an uncle in my family. My real biological uncle is Rick Granat, who a character inspired by him and appears throughout Moon Manor. So Ricky and Jimmy were life partners, and together since the late 60s. They had a really cool musical comedy touring comedian duo. They toured all over the world. They had Robin Williams open for them at one point. Jay Leno was opening for them at one point. They worked on cruise ships. I just grew up with this like really cool dynamic duo in my mind, because of course Rick passed when I was a baby of an AIDS related illness. So I never knew Ricky growing up, but Jimmy stayed in our family. So I learned about my uncle by way of Jimmy. And that's why I say he's my honorary uncle. So he's, as a lifetime performer and an actor and an activist, when Machete and I moved to LA in 2009 and we started making short films individually and together, we always cast Jimmy in anything we could put him in, because he is just the most magnetic person ever. In the last, handful of years, he's been in like a Kanye West music video, in a Vince Staples music video. He's in a bunch of commercials. It's just really rare to have a senior on camera that can really hold their own like Jimmy still is. So we have both that personal connection, and then also really being inspired by his perspectives on life and death, because it's very unusual. And I feel very blessed to have had that influence since a young age of Jimmy talking about introducing me to concepts like the Tibetan Book of the Dead, to concepts like your death could be something to be celebrated and not feared. So just hearing all that from him for so long really inspired the character and inspired the movie. And as we say, we wanted to make, a lot of filmmakers, their first film, they make coming of age movies. It's like kind of the most common thing you see. And we really wanted to make a coming of death movie, as we say. So that was, some of that original inspiration.
One of the reasons I think why we're having this conversation is because, and we are excited for the fact that in addition to sort of bringing end of life conversations into the mainstream, bringing the concept of an end-of-life doula into the mainstream. This is one of the first feature films, if not the first feature film, that includes as a main character an end-of-life doula. And I'm curious if you can talk about how your decisions to include an end-of-life doula in the film, in the story, in the conversation.
So when we were writing this, you're building out the world, you're building out the characters. Who would Jimmy know? Not just like Jimmy in real life. And we would joke because we're like, we have a lot of kind of younger characters in this. Shouldn't he have older friend characters? We're like, well, in real life, he actually has some of his best friends are millennials. Like, they're not. And I also was like, he's older. Maybe a lot of friends have passed away or died at that point. Like, would there be a lot of people there? So going off that, we're like, okay, obviously you want a caretaker. He has a terminal illness. Where's the conflict? All right, maybe his family doesn't agree, his brother doesn't agree, and it's slowly morphing. But we knew of the death doula community at that time, and I think at this point, it's like who brought up what first. I don't know if it's that on that granular level, but we both were aware of death doulas. So and I remember us distinctly talking about, we have never seen a death doula in any film, and just kind of like, whoa, that would be amazing. That would be radical to have a death doula in this, and yeah, like you're building out this world. So I think it was kind of a natural, it was very organic. It wasn't like, what is a death doula? We were very kind of aware already at that point. Yeah, so we knew about it, but as we went, we researched and learned more about death doula-ism. Is that a word? I don't know. Death doula world. But that was definitely on the radar right off the bat. It was like, oh yeah, let's include a death doula character. This is important, and it's amazing.
And I would actually I feel like there's an opportunity to ask, just as we continue to be learning, and we want to hopefully this be a resource for people to learn that are watching. Do you prefer the term end of life doula over death doula? What's going on there?
So I think that varies from person to person, community to community. Some people choose death doulas, some choose end of life doulas, some choose death midwives, right? Soul midwives. I mean, there are so many terms that I think fit into that same concept of really journeying with people as they get closer to their last breath. So honestly, the way I view it, and this is, I think you can create your own term, to be quite honest, right? Right. So like sometimes I say I'm a journey woman who accompanies people to their last breath. I mean, it works based on your community as well. So there are some culturally, there are some places where the use the word death is not really appropriate. And so you might use, end of life in that space, right? And so I think it just depends on you and the communities that you're serving which term you prefer. We are called the International End of Life Doula Association. So we certainly use end of life doula, but we also in conversation and in our trainings use the word death doula as well.
Great. Love continuing to learn.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. What a beautiful question, Erin. And just to expand on that even more for, for our community, what is an end of life doula? What do you, we put that in our movie. There's a breakdown, there's a scene that breaks it down, and it's very basic. But how can you explain maybe a little bit more about what a end of life doula does?
So, everybody has their elevator speech, and going to what Dr. Edie Chisholm said is everyone shows up very differently, depending on the cultures they serve, where they serve. So there's not kind of a one definition that fits everyone. So a lot of times the definition I give is a very big definition that kind of encompasses all of it. And that is, I say it's someone who, we labor into life and we labor out of life. And our culture in the United States has forgotten how to labor death. And so it's someone that accompanies the dying and their loved ones on the laboring of the death, returning that knowledge that we as humans once had, but were taken away, so that the sacredness can be returned back to the dying process. But and it also depends on the audience I'm speaking to. I will choose different words.
Yeah, that kind of, I'm inspired to share, just taking that and going back to the original question of how we came to include end of life doula in our movie, which is, I think we really wanted to, our North Star with the character of Jimmy in this movie was to provide an entertaining example of what it means to have a responsible death, a good death. So we create a character who's like, he's going to be such an advocate for himself in this process. So what does he do? He takes care of all of his affairs legally and contractually and his possessions. He also ties up loose ends with his family. He also, in that he has a caretaker, he has his own obituary reporter, he has his doula that comes to be a part of it. So, and the idea of that being like, the hero at the center of the journey of the movie is the big thing he's accomplishing. Most movies, you go on this whole big journey, you don't know what's going to happen at the end. From the first minute what's going to happen at the end of our film. He's going to die. But the journey is showing how to have a responsible death. And yeah, our version of it, because of course it's so nuanced. And then, off of that, when in doing that research and creating that character in this world, when the idea of an end of life doula came in, it seemed so obvious he would have that. And then I know that for both of us, even getting to dive in, because any art you create is always like your own journey into learning about that world, right? I know I had been by the bedside of several loved ones who had made the transition. And when I started reading and hearing about end of life doulas, it was like this sigh of relief, like, oh, this is a thing. This is a calling. This isn't just something I keep having, a trauma I keep having to burden. This is like a sacred assignment. And that was a really beautiful part of the journey. And just to kind of, and since the years of making Moon Manor, we've actually both lost several other close people to us. And I think the movie and the idea of the character having a good death, it's sort of what we would really hope for each person we've lost, and for ourselves, that we'll have the wherewithal and the inner strength to create a good death in that way. So just a few more things I wanted to add there. So it's not, oh, we just heard of doulas and brought out the sky, added to the story. It's so layered, the personal journey of it.
I love that phrase, sacred assignments. Sorry, Jamie. I just wanted
No,
to,
please.
I just thought that was a beautiful phrase that a doula provides a sacred assignment or takes a sacred assignment.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it's
Yeah.
like the most sacred assignments, right? I mean, you hear about birth, right? We plan for our birthdays, we plan for weddings, we plan for babies, but we don't plan for that. And it's like that's the end all. And I think Erin and I both, in our personal experiences, I'm uh, I'm coming from the lens of a very personal experience of wanting to end my own life at a very early age due to sexual assault. So it's like having this personal connection with death, kind of on that edge, not being afraid of it, not feeling like it's a bad thing. So, I think we're coming together to be like help each other through transmute the traumas we've gone through with personal loved ones and our own selves. And like I will say, like, the death doula community has provided, as Erin stated, such immense relief to have these terms, to have this knowledge as we continue, because as life continues, the movie is kind of petrified in its own state and will live on as is. But like our world continues. So to get to speak with you all today is just, and as we've done the research, it's just been such a relief to learn that there is a place to put this energy to actually help, to assist in a way that, like, I don't know if I know personally, I didn't have the tools before, but doing the research and making this movie, I do. Not as much as you both have, but enough where it's like, oh, this is to say to Erin's point, sacred assignment. It really is. But I want to toss the torch to you both. Just continue to talk about your experience as an end of life doula.
Yeah. And you said something that for me struck a chord, and that was I don't have as much experience as the two of you do in this work. And with Shelby, if you think about Shelby's definition of what it means to be a death doula, death midwife, end of life doula, someone who accompanies people as they labor death, right? You have, and those who are watching, all of us in this space, we actually have what we need to do that with people already. Like that is a sacred breathing that is already in us, in how to be with people at the end of life. What happens is we've seen people die in hospitals and die away from family, in a sense, right? Now, granted, family could be with them in hospitals, but they've not died in personal spaces, right? More personal spaces. And so some of what we are used to doing, what our great grandparents were used to doing, we are not used to doing anymore. Not because it's not in us, but because we've not had opportunities to breathe it, to live it out, right? So I always encourage people who, now, do I think that everyone should be, I actually don't like the word should. Do I think that everyone's calling or purpose or passion or pulling is to be a death doula? No. But do I think that we all have within us the ability to be very present with someone, to either sit with them in silence or speak words of comfort, to help them sort of move beyond, in a sense, any pain that they might be feeling through imagination, to sit with somebody in their sorrow, to feel their sorrow with them? Do I think that we all have that ability? Yes. So while you may not have been doing the work as a death doula, do you have what it takes to be a death doula? I'm certain you do. Also, you'll find that, I think Shelby talks about, when she entered into this space as a death doula, doesn't mean she was already an ICU nurse. So she was already accompanying people in this space in a certain way, right? I'm serving as a chaplain in nursing homes and through hospice. So I'm accompanying people in this way. I think part of this movie and part of what INELDA does is help people see that the ordinary person can do this work. It doesn't, like, yes, we want you to be better equipped, right? So sit for a class, read a book, gain some of the wisdom and knowledge that people who are doing this more frequently have had an opportunity to gain for themselves. Gain some of that. But you have this in you. And the second thing that you mentioned is, I too am a survivor. of childhood sexual abuse. And you talked about sort of your journey leading you to a place where you're like, I don't even know if I want to be here anymore, right? And so in the film, Jimmy chooses, you know, he takes autonomy over his last days, because I don't think any of us gets to pick the exact moment that we say goodbye, but we can choose how we get to that point in many ways, right? Jimmy kind of chooses how he wants to say goodbye, and with the assistance, right, of medical aid and dying, he's like, I don't want to end here. He chooses how he wants to live out his last days. Can you talk a little bit about like what that part of the journey, whether it was like how you wrote the character to make that decision, and what that felt like doing that as you were making this beautiful film?
First of all, thank you. Yeah, wow, thank you. That was so beautiful to hear and just really affected by your words. I think that with Jimmy and this decision, we as filmmakers, you can do anything, right? You can write anything. You can, and that's kind of harder sometimes when you don't have any cap on it, right? So it was like, all right, what if it's a 24-hour film in one location and it's just the last day? Like, what would happen? So you working within these parameters of kind of just as a tech, like as a filmmaker, as a creative, you're like, where's the starting point? It's kind of scary to look at a blank page sometimes, and you're like, gosh, I could put anything down. And I think for me personally as a filmmaker, I'm just like, no, this is the challenge. How can you, and you know, we do 48-hour film festival challenges where you're like, one line, one prop, you do 48 hours, go. So just to like get yourself out of overthinking it, we kind of made these structures for us where it's like, here's the containment. Now, how do we paint the picture within this containment? What makes sense for it? So just on a technical aspect, it was like, let's like make this easy, like in a weird way, like a easier format for us to work in. And then I think from there it was kind of like, you know, you get to get the paintbrush out. And I don't know, maybe there's people in real life, it's like, man, if I have to create my last day, what would that be? And it's kind of a similar process, right? It's like, what day do I do it now? Like, you're dealing with so many other very similar, is kind of parallel, I would imagine, in that way too, where it's like, maybe contain it a little, you know, what room is it going to be in? So you kind of start with the baby steps and a generalization of what kind of container you want to play in, sandbox you want to play in. And then from there, it became a lot easier to start drafting.
Yeah, and I would add to that, you know, as far as the specific question of a choice being made, someone being able to make a choice, there was two humans that were very much influenced us while we were in the writing phase, one of which was my grandmother, who had Alzheimer's. She lived alone till she was 99, and then Alzheimer's came in really strong, really fast, and only in the last few years of her life did she live in a nursing home. And through that experience, who, you know, she's one of my best friends, if not my best friend, sorry, Machete, my other best friend.
That's
and
fine.
Machete's also became—
We have many best friends. There's so many best friends. You can have many best friends.
She also Machete became very close with her as well. Her name is Ruby Love. And you know what, a long story condensed down to what her final months looked like were her not wanting to live, but her only option was to refuse food and water in order to be able to leave. Because, you know, certainly didn't have the option of medical aid in dying, even though Alzheimer's is a terminal illness, and also being in a home, which that was, you know, those years of going to visit her there, this place that's keeping people alive for the sake of being alive. That's, I know, a whole other can of worms of a Zoom that we could get into, but it really informed me and informed us of some really strong philosophical and ethical questions that I'm still asking myself. But that very much came into informing the idea of getting to create a movie where someone could gracefully make that choice, and there are no obstacles in that choice. The only obstacles like within himself of having, you know, fear in the final moments and things like that. And the other human that was really present in our lives at that time was actually one of Jimmy's very closest friends, Mike, who in the course of us writing the movie, he was diagnosed with ALS, of course, came on also very strong, very quick. And he passed on within about a year and a half. And the journey for him of then, of course, he could receive medical aid in dying. We live in California. And then watching his journey going back and forth of if he wanted to make that choice or not, and getting radical stem cells treatments, wanting to reverse it. And then the next day being like, no, I think I can make peace with it and make my exit. We were just like, oh gosh, the art imitating life, imitating art. Are we like, did we ask for this? Like, did we conjure this? Like this? No, but yes, but no. So there was definitely that like happening right in front of us and around us, inspiration of exploring these ideas. And again, going into the idea of being able to show someone the making the choice would, and the legality around that, imagining a future where that would be the easiest part of it, which of course is not the reality that we live in. Just wanted to add that context.
I have to say something at this point. Which is, for those that are watching this that have not yet seen the movie because it's not out, these are heavy, heavy, heavy topics. But the treatment of these topics in the film is so not heavy. It's so approachable, and I would love for us to hear from you about your choices to make medical aid in dying from Alzheimer's, choosing your own death and planning your own death, having a death duel, like your choices creatively about how do you approach a difficult topic and make it approachable.
Yeah, great question, and definitely something that was very much on our minds. Cinema-wise, one of our biggest inspirations is the movie Harold and Maude, which if you've seen it, if you haven't, go watch it right away. Which Machete introduced me to that movie. That's a long time favorite of hers, and one that came to me more recently that she brought into my sphere of watching or of creating Moon Manor. And Harold and Maude treats the Maude character, she's like, I'm 80, I'm gonna die. And like, what else is going on today? I'm gonna just choose to die. And it's so funny, and it's so dark, and it's so edgy, and it's like in the 70s. It's just the coolest movie. So that was definitely that. And also All That Jazz was an inspiration. When that tone, when you can balance that tone, those themes with that tone and do it right, it's just like some of our favorite films. And I think there's also this desire of like, you can like backdoor the biggest questions of life by way of like, it's a comedy, and backdoor it by way of, it also like this, usually when you see things about end of life, it's documentary. And I feel like the way even it's presented as like a trailer or an article, you're like, oh God, that looks really heavy. It's always like the font and the colors. You're just like who's really ever in the mood to like look at that, unless you're like one of us who's like always in the mood because this is what we do. So those were a lot of the things of, I think it's also like our tone as writers and creators, we both toe that line. And then together that was the voice that came out. And it's also Jimmy. Jimmy's a funny guy, and he's the way he speaks, his character speaks with such irreverence throughout the film of, his choice. And there's a line in the very beginning with the reporters asking him like, this will be my first feature, like, thanks to you, I get to write about you. And Jimmy goes, well, it's my first death. And you see the reporter like, oh God, how do I answer that? And that line is like so Jimmy, the person, and then so the character. And to literally laugh in the face of death, I think is also something that I know, again, having for myself experienced like firsthand loved ones going through that process, is just, there's nothing like a moment of comedy to lighten a mood. So that was definitely wanting to bring that in. So I'm glad it worked, because that's something that is not easy. And on the page, people would be like, I don't see the tone of this. I don't get how this is. How are you going to say this? It's so funny, but it's so dark. And we were like, but what if it's not dark? What if it's just light? And we're going to explore that. So Machete, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you was a very clear picture of how we operate, and I think individually, what's interesting to me is like in our individual creative spaces, we make such different things, but whenever we do come together, there's always, it's like funny and endearing, and it's just an interesting process that we have. And I think with Jimmy, obviously at the root of this and as our muse, he really, yeah, I think, I mean, Erin, you said it so eloquently and perfect. I don't really have much to add on other than like, I think it's so funny that when we come together, we always create this interesting dialogue, you know, and you know, we are, because we are so different. I think it's one of those things where sometimes it does get a little tricky because we want different things, but then it's like we rub it together to create a nice shiny smooth stone, and this is the outcome of it, is Moon Manor, where it's like this beautiful blend of finding that balance of tone. When does that come in, who gets to say that, which character, you know. And it's like, also, maybe this goes in line with your work, and Jamie, I feel like maybe this could speak to you a little bit since you're chaplain and theologist, but you know, you hear voices, you know, you really do. And I don't want to sound too crazy, but it's like a vessel, you know. I really feel, and I think Erin agrees with this, I think when we're contemplating, there's just voices that come up that's like, no, like Remy will say that, the caretaker will say that, this is something that, you know, you can just like feel all the different characters within you kind of flow through you, and it comes on from the high, you know. And I think we're constantly, that's our dragon tail that we're constantly chasing, is like being the vessel that gets to like you know, inform and create that way. So as far as that goes, yes, it's a beautiful blend of real people, fictional characters, but also ourselves and even beyond, I feel like. So I guess with that, as someone who's, I guess, started as a chaplain helping people transition, what is that like for you? Because we do have these huge themes of Tibetan Book of the Dead versus Catholicism, and like how that does not gel. How do you, in your work, how do you find that peace, even if people are not in peace with each other at those end of days?
Are we talking about family members not being at peace, or just a person sort of inner?
Both. Could be
Yeah,
both. I think somebody, you know, some maybe individually, but also like on the bigger group aspect.
yeah, yeah. I enter in, well, typically as a death doula, I don't enter in with any particular sort of faith, you know, space in a sense, right? Except the faith space that you're sitting in. So I enter in hopefully with an awareness of what's meaningful for you, and whether that is God, Allah, the universe, or you, right? That's how I enter in, sort of honoring that as the sacred. And I do believe that the universe speaks to us all, right? And so when I'm there, it is, um, what is meaningful for you? What do you need to hear, see, smell, taste, perhaps, experience for peace? And is that something that is going to happen because I'm present, or is that something that will happen because you tap into the thing that you need, that you discover was in you, right? And so my job is really to guide you to the voice, the thing, the energy, the gods or gods that speak to you and can guide your way. And so I typically don't have any kind of, I don't usually have any tension with anyone. And I've accompanied people who were Catholic, who were Wiccan, who were atheists, who were like, you name it, I've probably been at someone's bedside or on the floor with them, because traditionally their elders sat around them on the floor. And so I just got to sit with them on the floor as they took their last breath. But it is finding out what's most meaningful spiritually, existentially to you. And for most of the doulas that I know, they enter into that space. Very different than the chaplain who might be listening, and some chaplains who may come in with a certain faith perspective. Um, as a doula, I'm entering in with a, let's see what we have here. Is it crystals? Is it a Bible? Is it sage? You know, is it you know, veneration of our ancestors? What makes sense for you? And I'm going to meet you there.
Mm.
And I help families understand what it means to do that for the dying person, because it doesn't matter if I'm Catholic, if you're Muslim.
Mm.
Like my Catholicism, okay, great, yay, I'm happy. But if you're Muslim, I need to know what, according to your tradition of Islam, makes sense for you as you near your last days. And helping families see that in this beautiful, right? Because that, not life and death, because it's really life and it's birth and death, right? And so helping people, we're just accompanying people on this journey in a way that matters most to them, faith included.
Thank you.
And I want to say that and I'll say this, I think what you did in the film was beautiful and bold. And I love being able to laugh. Perhaps it's unfair because we do this work that we can find humor in a lot of things, but it was a genuine sort of real life kind of, right? Not forced humor. It was, I can see this happening in someone's family and everybody pausing for a moment to laugh just because the moment calls for laughter. So I think you did a great job with that.
Thank you. It's funny, like, um, my brother-in-law died last year, almost a year ago, and I happened to be there for his transition and was helping him with pain management and like hourly. It was one of the most end of life doula experiences I've had yet, and he got to die at home with his family, you know. But like 10 minutes after he had died, and I think I said some words that felt appropriate. My sister was there, his wife, and it was 4:30 a.m., right? And she starts telling me a story about how he hated the cats. And I had no idea, right? And like for the longest time, they had these cats for years, and the cats are still around. And she's just like, he loved me so much, you know, and he loved me so much, he even allowed me to have these cats, and just like we're weeping, right? And we're like kind of smiling and weeping, and then we look down, and I'm like, look at your feet, and the cats are in the room with us. Like, they're the only animals that were in the room. And we just started busting up laughing so hard. And it was just like 10 minutes right after, you know? So I think just real life experiences, yeah, it really does happen where you're like, how could you laugh during such a heavy thing? But I'm like, how can you not laugh sometimes? It really, you don't have control over the situation. And sometimes the stuff is funny. So it's really great to hear from people who do this on a regular that it hits home, you know.
I think, and I had mentioned this before, I sincerely appreciated from your film the acknowledgement that there is a relationship with death that we all have, and it can look different for everyone. And we were able to see a snippet of what it looks like for this gentleman named Jimmy. But it opens the door to help redefining for other people how it can look different and how they can experience it different. Some people don't want to experience it any different than they know of, but there are people who want to experience it differently, but then they don't know where to go with that. And they say, okay, well, I know I want to do, but how do I do that? Who can I go to that can help me navigate this part of my life? Because going to Jamie's, talking about death, it's talking about life. It's just the last couple chapters. And so that's where I really appreciated bringing the doula in to help with that narrative.
Yeah, right. I mean, my question is like, what's your end of life plan as end of life planners, right? It's like, what does that look like for you? Because we got to talk to Jimmy about what he wants, and he really does want an intentional death in this way with the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And that, you know, I think, Erin, you are the chosen one to assist in that sacred assignment for real. But as far as like end of life planning, I know it's, you know, as much as we're creating it, we're also asking ourselves the same question. So, and maybe it's too intimate. Maybe you don't need to share everything, but
that's a big question for all of us for like the last 5 minutes.
I know, but I'm just like, how do you like you're processing so many other people. It's like, how do you process your own? Like, where's your own? When do you get that time for yourself, and what does that look like?
I would say in preparing to do this work from a stable and balanced platform, you first have to look inward and find and meet your own mortality. And in doing that work is truly instrumental in being an end-of-life doula, because it's not fair for me to ask anything of anyone that I can't ask myself of myself. So of course, I live in a state that medical aid in dying is not available at this present time. So, that death plan is going to look different because it's not going to be as orchestrated, and it's a little bit more general. It's the feeling of the room, or versus actually having more of like an event plan. So that's kind of how mine has differed and continues to evolve.
How about you, Jamie? Thanks, Shelby.
Yeah, thank you.
I think it changes. The more I learn, the more it changes, right? At one time, I was like, oh, I got to be cremated. And now I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's actually not quite, for me, not quite as sort of environmentally safe, I guess is the word I'll use right now, as I thought. I thought this was like, oh, okay, well, now I'll prefer to be buried like this. Like before, it was like, well, don't spend a lot of money on a casket. Now I'm like, oh, don't, no casket whatsoever. Just, wrap me up and put. So I think it changes, but Shelby said really what it is, right? You need to think about this. If you're going to do this work, you must be thinking about this for yourself, using your own imagination and all of that, so that when you enter in with people, you have some kind of sense of what it means to consider these things. And when I watch the film, I think that's one of the things I walk away from is, I think you call it a responsible sort of end of life, a responsible death, right? And that is, it's not just the little things that I want for me, it is the fact that I'm talking to my family about those little things now, right? And so I think from the film, that is like one of the highlights, is that Jimmy said, this is it for me. These 10, making a number up, these 10, watch the film and you'll see how many, like these 10 things is what I want for me, and how wonderful it would be for all of us to be able to let people know in the most ideal circumstances, right? We can't control some things, right? But these 10 things, if we're able, I'd like these 10 things to take place, so that the family and chosen or biological who are here after we take our last breath have a moment to grieve and to breathe, and not have to plan what it would look like to honor us based on what they think we might want. So from the film, for me, that is what I got, but that's also how I'm trying to live in a way that allows my loved ones, after I go, to sit and cry and laugh and tell jokes, but not have to say, did she want a blue dress or a red dress? Did she want to be in a church or something at home, right? So that from the film and from my own life, I think really resonated.
We have that moment in Moon Manor, kind of like right at the beginning of the third act, where Jimmy asks Wanna Bang, who's one of his good friends and a drag queen and the MC of his funeral, and he says, "Are you, what do you think it's like?" And she says, "What?" And he says, "Dying." She says, "Are you afraid of dying?" And then they have this really beautiful conversation, again with the kind of like a bit of the irreverence. But one of the lines that Jimmy says is, "I used to be scared because I didn't know when it would happen or how it would happen. But now that I've made all those choices, I feel okay about it." And I think that that's maybe, towards the end of our conversation, if like the larger spirit of both the work you're doing and what we've hoped to accomplish with the film is just even presenting the idea that instead of your death being the thing that you spend your life living in denial of, not preparing for it all, not even wanting to conceive of it, that what if there just was another way to go about it? And if you planned it, as Machete said, like you plan your wedding or your prom or the birth or a birthday party or anything you plan, what would it be like if you did that work and just see how it feels? See how it feels to, like, memento mori, this concept of remember every day remembering I must die, which is like there's a Buddhist practice, there's an ancient memento mori sect of people that's like, there's the death watch that reminds you every 5 minutes you're going to die. And people come into it's so morbid. It's so, ooh, are you, ooh, you're spooky. And it's kind of like, or am I really sane? Or am I like taking the one thing that we know that for sure is going to happen and plan for it and just see how it makes you feel? So yeah, just that seemed apropos, that moment in the film, which, I also just want to say that and I'm giving little, not doing spoilers, but just little blips of the film to try to whet the appetite, that, you know, we also have a scene shortly after that one where Jimmy confronts his fear, and it's embodied by way of himself, the different things going through his head. And there's multiple Jimmys that all confront each other, because we would have also not been in, I think it would have been incorrect to also not show him having his moment of vulnerability and fear. We're not saying don't be scared, you should just be so happy and excited and joyful about your death. No, it's scary, it's overwhelming, it's daunting, it's all the things. And it's maybe just the idea is more embracing, just like we have this rainbow of characters of different backgrounds, ethnicities, and perspectives in the film. The idea is also like embracing the rainbow of emotions that death brings up for yourself or for loved ones. So, you know, I'm just so glad that we could have this talk, because these are all the contexts we've really been itching to want to add to the film as we lead up to the release, and then people getting to see it. That, you know, there's some of the most fascinating conversations of my life have come up around having made Moon Manor. So it's just really cool to get to continue it here. And I wish we had like all day to talk.
I know we could go on for hours and hours.
Quick piggyback off of what Erin is
Oh,
saying
sorry.
too. No, just really briefly. It's interesting because yeah, a lot of people don't look at death or don't, and that, you know, the fear scene that Jimmy's going through, it's like that experience, you know, there are people who have experienced that. I'm one of those people where I'm like, I'm gonna do it. I don't want to be here anymore. But obsessing it on another level, right? It's like, uh, you know, like actually being in that world of death, and being familiar with it and not being afraid of it and trying it, right? Trying it on for a size. And what I, through this experience, has helped me, and I hope that other people can see, it's like, you can do that. You're going to be able to do that, because we all die no matter what. And this taboo, you know, the taboo subject of suicide, right? Or end of life, right? It's they're parallel in a way. So for me, it's like I'm really excited for people who might be experiencing those feelings of impulsivity, or they just can't take it anymore. But it's like, for me, I'm so excited that I get to plan for my death, but in a different way. In a way that's not super traumatic, in a way that's healing and maybe just natural, rather than we gotta cut this out now because I can't deal with this. So I hope that this movie also brings those kinds of discussions to the table of like, you know, I think it does. I think it's like, let's talk about all the elements of death, and whether it's a personal viewpoint or just general one. Man, I mean, yes, there are so many nuances. So thank you for letting me talk about that side and that angle of allowing people to, it's okay if you want to die. Just like maybe we could plan it and, you know, wait on that and plan it differently because we're all going there anyway.
We are very excited for you, for your movie. It's say again how people can find out more about it. Um,
Yeah, please. And yeah, if you're intrigued, you want to see it, it's going to be available March 11th, anywhere you can get within North America, anywhere you can get a film on demand. So that's going to look like Amazon or iTunes, Vudu, those types of platforms. And all of that information's on our Instagram, which is at Moon Manor Movie. Each word has an underscore in between it, Moon Manor Movie. You can also just Google Moon Manor Movie. We've got a website. Our distributor has a website with all the information where you can get it. Just give us a Google and you'll find where you can watch it. But yes, starting March 11th, which is so exciting.
which is so exciting. Well, thank you for spending this time with the International End of Life Doula Association and Dr. Jamie and Shelby and myself. And thank you so much for bringing this concept, the bigger idea of death, into the mainstream, but also the idea of what a death doula or an end of life doula can bring to the picture. We're very grateful for that and very excited for you, and wish you the best in the launch of Moon Manor.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We'll tag in everything so our people can find you, and you know, thank you for the work you're doing.
Thanks. I didn't plug in any. Sorry. Thank you for the work that you're doing. I know there'll be an art card for, you know, websites and stuff, so I didn't put that in.
Yeah.
So
thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
honored to sit with you all, and thank you for the work that you do on a daily, hourly, minutely. That's not a word. We're gonna make it up. But thank you for sitting with us. It's such a pleasure, and to expand our world even more, knowing that you're out there doing the good, hard, beautiful work, and helping people labor and transition. It's just like brings me peace of mind. So thank you for
Thank
having
you,
us.
ladies.
Thank
I,
you
I
both.
hope that we can
Have a
continue because it's been lovely getting to know you all,
Yeah,
really.
absolutely.